everybody. This is going to be a special little edition that I may or may not add to the news, depending on how long it is. If it's too long, then I'll make it a separate video altogether. This is going to be some of the top stories of 2024 as we go into 2025. Some of which, if you've been following me for a while, you'll recognize some of these stories. If you haven't been following me, why not? Tensions were on the rise in the villages this year when children moved in with their grandparents. Residents of the village of Linden were frustrated that their children had been living with their grandparents. While their neighbors were unhappy with the family's living arrangements, they were equally unhappy with the developers' apparent oblivience about the enforcing of deed restrictions against children in their home. John Duff contacted villagesnews.com and identified himself as the subject of the article. Although he previously had not been identified by villagesnews.com, he blasted the original news stories as full of misleading and inaccurate information. He wanted a chance to explain what was happening. Our daughter and her children started living in our home in mid-March of this year due to an order from the Florida Department of Child and Family Services. He alleged that his daughter had been physically assaulted by her husband in the children's presence. He was advised by DCFS that the children would have to live with us or they would be placed in foster care and not necessarily together. I don't know any grandparent that would allow that. He said the children stayed in his home for their safety and moved out at the end of May. They lived in our residence for 2 months, not a year, that was reported. We immediately contacted the village's developer and advised them of the situation. We were advised that it was permissible to have children reside in our home due to the unfortunate circumstances. They also advised that the children can be here anytime, however, they are not allowed to reside here permanently. That's not exactly correct. They're allowed to be here anytime up to, I believe it's 30 days per calendar year. That's it, and they gotta go. So you can't have them come in and stay for 6 months. That's against the rules. You know, and as they say, rules are rules. We were in constant contact with the villages, Duff said. Duff added that he has lived in the villages for 18 years. Well, then you know the rules. As far as being
Florida's friendliest hometown,
I would have agreed years ago, but not anymore. Unfortunately, this street in the village of Linden is the most unfriendly street I have ever lived on. Well, that's just, he's just lashing out right there because the street in Linden is no different than any other street in the villages. We all have district rules. And like I've said many, many, many times, before you buy a home here, find out what district that home's in, get a copy of the district rules. They're absolutely free. Read them. And if you don't agree with them, move on. Christmas brought some good cheer to those who had begun to doubt Costco's commitment to the villages. The villages confirmed over the holidays that Costco has officially signed off on its new location at Buffalo Ridge Plaza. Costco will build a 162,000 square foot warehouse-style store, will sell gasoline, and offer liquor. The store will have 700 parking spots. The news comes as many in the villages were beginning to doubt that Costco was actually coming to
Florida's friendliest hometown.
It was a dangerous year to be a pedestrian in the villages. In August, a 77-year-old was struck and killed while crossing a street at Lake Sumter Landing. The woman was walking at 7:12 a.m. when she was struck by a Toyota Corolla driven by a 23-year-old Leesburg woman, which was traveling eastbound on Old Mill Run east of Buena Vista Boulevard. The villager was transported to an area hospital where she died of injuries suffered in that accident. In October, a golf cart driver struck a pedestrian who had been crossing the street at Spanish Springs Town Square. The pedestrian and the driver of the golf cart were both transported by ambulance to the village's public safety department to UF Health Spanish Plains Hospital. The golf cart driver was cited for failure to use due care toward a pedestrian. In December, a village's couple in her 80s was struck by a car in a roundabout. That same month, a villager was struck and killed while walking across U.S. Highway 301. Residents of villages fought this year for a fence to protect them from the intrusion of outside growth. Peter and Nancy Blackmore, the village of Caroline, erected a stockade fence more than a decade ago on the village's eastern front. Their home backs up to Cherry Lake Road. At first, they hoped to block out noise from traffic. They added K-9 on duty, signs to deter potential foot traffic from wandering in from the increasingly busy roadway. Now the massive Hammock Oaks development across Cherry Lake Road will soon be home to thousands of new Lady Lake residents. In 2013, the Blackmores believed they had a right to erect a fence, as the villages had essentially surrendered the responsibility of maintaining that particular fence to the residents. About a year ago, residents of Polo Ridge, which is in a Community Development District 3, lodged a complaint about the fence. You know, that's funny. These people are so far apart. It's almost like different counties, but I don't think it is. What the hell does Polo Ridge have anything to do with Caroline? This is the complaint department that I don't agree with. If you don't live in that district, you have no right to make a complaint about anything that goes on in that district. The Blackmore's fence has been found in violation of deed restriction. Meanwhile, the Amenity Authority Committee struggled with the request for a new fence from residents on Griffin Avenue on the historic side of the villages. Those residents said they are concerned about looming construction of multi-story apartment buildings nearby and ever-increasing traffic. The AAC tabled the issue and challenged the residents to pursue a petition process to prove that all the residents have a desire for a fence. An additional $11 million in amenity money was steered toward executive golf courses in the villages in 2024 after residents complained about atrocious conditions. Earlier in the year, golfers began complaining about courses they found unplayable. Residents were swift to document their unhappiness. Advertisement of free golf for life is a bunch of hooey. They are ruining the reason people have chosen the villages. When golf officials tried to blame poor conditions to the El Nino weather pattern, residents howled in disbelief. The last straw came in the village's Daily Sun at the height of the controversy, published a story tooting the courses as pristine. Feeling the heat and unhappy residents, the Amenity Authority Committee and the Project-wide Advisory Committee started ripping up budgets and began devoting millions of dollars toward the courses. A United States Golf Association agronomist was called in for an emergency consultation. Oh, you guys remember this story. This went on, it seemed like forever. This year, a dramatic arrest finally marked the end to a years-long hoarding saga in the villages. The home at 1889 Wildwood Loop in the village of Sunset Point had been the scourge of the neighborhood for 3 years. Barbara Packard, who suffers from scoliosis and taught school for 40 years, was reportedly overwhelmed and intimidated by her son, Jeffrey, who has a long criminal history. He was arrested on drug charges March 11th at his mother's home. I'm sure we all remember that debacle. And if I had to pick a number one story for the year of 2024, it would just about have to be this one. A kidnapping followed by a violent standoff shocked the neighborhood in the villages in 2024. James Savage, 55, was arrested March 16th at the conclusion of a 24-hour standoff at 7970 Southeast 174th Bellhaven Loop in the village of Chatham, which is in Marion County. He fled there after allegedly kidnapping a woman from a home in the village of Monarch Grove, which is in Sumter County. He shoved a woman into a Mercedes, setting in motion a manhunt that ended with a standoff that trashed the home of Lauren Peru, a widow who had befriended Savage. He has a long criminal history, including a 2020 conviction of exploitation of the elderly, involving a woman with dementia. A judge in Marion County ultimately declared that Savage was not competent to stand trial. He was turned over for commitment through the Department of Children and Families. That was a story and a half, and luckily we had video from the lady's doorbell camera, and we put it on the news. I'm not sure I put it on YouTube News or Patreon News, but anyway, we had video of it. And maybe this would be number one news for 2024. Who knows? The damage left by Hurricane Milton was the number one news story in 2024, and there was a huge amount of damage. In October, the late-season hurricane flooded the boardwalk at Lake Sumter Landing and left behind plenty of debris. The boardwalk didn't reopen until December, which is about the same time the last of the debris from the storm was picked up in the villages. Villagers grew frustrated at the amount of time it took to collect the debris. You got to remember that the times has changed from when the developer used to do a lot of this themselves to now this corporation and like the third, maybe fourth generation of kids and grandkids taking over. It's all about making money. So they went to FEMA to do this. They didn't want to pay out of their pocket to do any of this. So FEMA has rules and regulations. This is what they'll do. This is what they won't do. So in that situation, the developer had his hands tied. There was nothing he could do. There was rules set in place about what they would pick up, what they would not pick up. There was rules set into place exactly how it had to be set out. And it was only going to be in every area. There was going to be one day for pickup. That's it. One day. And they would not be coming back. So people have a tendency sometimes here, and I see it all the time, they don't think the rules really apply. And so they try to change things at the last minute, and it just doesn't work. And then those are the people that complain. They didn't pick my stuff up. Well, you didn't follow the rules. The Villages was using a contracted hauler operated under strict guidelines for reimbursement by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Some residents were aghast that the Villages was seeking FEMA reimbursement at a time when many other victims of catastrophic weather events were still waiting for help. The golf courses were flooded during Hurricane Milton, which is by design to protect homes from flooding. However, golfers soon became impatient and demanded the reopening of golf courses. You know, everybody seems to think that what they want has to come first. This place has always been designed. I've showed it. I've reported it. I don't even know how many times, a dozen times. Golf courses, especially championship courses, are designed for the floodwater of a huge rainstorm, hurricanes, anything like that. That's where the floodwaters go, into the golf course. That's by design. Residents of the Oak Grove Village area of Wildwood were trapped in their homes due to flooding from Hurricane Milton. Now, you see these poor people, they're waiting around. They can't even get in their house, and you want to complain about a golf course. I'm ashamed of you. And here's another top story of the year, and I got to tell you, I don't know why. They make a big deal out of it whenever the developer and his family do anything to spend money on themselves, let's say. All of a sudden, it's big news, and I don't get it. Jennifer Parr in 2024 snapped up a $21 million waterfront estate on the Gulf of Mexico. The beachfront home is located on Gasparilla Island in Lee County. The $21 million purchase marked one of the highest property sales in the area, according to the Boca Bica in Boca Grande. The home is situated on more than an acre of land and features 8 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms. It also has 5 garage spaces as well as dedicated golf cart garage. And this goes back to earlier part of the year, and I congratulate this lady. She's got more balls than most of the men around here. A villager labored as a troll fought to bring back anonymous complaints in 2024.
Florida's friendliest hometown.
Cam Rupert of the Sweet Gum Villas in the village of Fenney became the self-described poster child of the debate over amenity when it comes to reporting deed compliance violations. Rupert famously found a cardboard sign in her yard earlier this year accusing her of being a troll. Her bravery in reporting a neighbor's dog excrement in his yard won both admiration and scorn in her neighborhood. Community Development District 12 had banned anonymous complaints and requires those contacting community standards about a violation to give their names. Rupert gave her name, and her accuser confirmed it was her. Rupert's outspokenness on the controversial stirred debate with regard to anonymous complaints. Well, I've already gave my opinion about that, so I'm not going to waste your time with it again. Well, that's it. That's the top stories of 2024 that come up this year. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll get out of here. Like I say, I may add this to the news, I may not, depending on how long it is after I edit it. And with that, I'll just get out of here. Have a great day. Have a great time here
From Florida's friendliest hometown.
This week's news is brought to you by my YouTube and Patreon members.